Top Lobster Productions.
In the shadows of the ancient ones, they never went away. They're still here today.
When the last trumpet sounds and the heavens crack, blah, 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 blah. Nephilim, Death Squad. Nephilim, Death Squad. Death Squad. Death Squad. Death Squad.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, a little reminder, if you're looking for a place to support the boys, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad is the way to do
And
it.
toplobster.com. We're not going to pull it up. We're not messing around
We don't have
today.
any time. We have to
don't
get
have
straight
time.
into the conversation. We are here with Ed Mabry. We're doing a late one on a Friday. Everybody knows that Fridays are for the Lord. I feel like we need
Everybody
to do,
knows.
every time we have Ed on, so we have to do this more often. But we're getting it done. Ed, before we get into the conversation, we're going to talk about the spiritual realm and I guess the biblical evidence for the spiritual realm, how to define it. Before we do that, let's talk about where people can support you and
And
find
don't
your
say
work.
it's in the spiritual realm, please.
Don't say it's in the spiritual realm.
No, absolutely not. I can't get paid from the spiritual realm. They don't take that at the bank. No, totally kidding. So where you can support me and look into everything that I've been doing. The two main sites. There's my regular legacy website, which is faithbyreason.net. Tons of material there. If you want to join, become a member, you get access to the entire Revelation series, the Genesis series that I'm working on right now, as well as a bunch of other stuff that is behind the paywall. Tons of information there. And you can also go to my Patreon, patreon.com/faithbyreason. And if you go there, you can that's where I'm most active. You can be a part of the Q&As. I answer your questions. You get discounts on things. You get bonus episodes you don't find anyplace else. And you can be a part of my monthly Bible study where we go through the entire Bible in 1 year, once a month, from the standpoint of the supernatural spiritual realm.
There you go.
So there you go.
May or may not. We're not
and
sure.
Also, there's my upcoming spiritual warfare course, which we'll probably talk about some today as well. That's going to be
What's the
starting
ETA
this
on that, Ed?
April.
There we go. Okay, cool. Very cool.
Yep, we're actively getting all the curriculum stuff together. Myself and John Linhart, who's been on the show in the past. It's going to be amazing. Every time John and I talk and we're getting our information together, we're like, man, this thing is going to kill. And I'm not saying that out of arrogance, but just because we think we're going to be able to help a lot of people. We're just really excited about, number one, about the ability to help people, and secondly, how many people need the help, because you can pre-register for it now. You can go to faithbyreason.net. On the front page, you'll see where you can sign up to pre-register just to let us know that you're interested. And we're sending out emails to your areas. I think if you scroll down a bit, it's right up there at the top, and there's also a visual. Yeah, so you can sign up there. No obligation. You're just getting on our mailing list, and I'm sending out emails. Actually, I'll be sending out another one either today or tomorrow, the second in the series, just preparing you for the course. And then once we get to March, April, then you'll be able to sign up for the actual course. But we want to let you know what you're getting into, because there's a cost involved, and we want to make sure you feel it's worth your while. But as part of that registration, we ask a few questions. How familiar are you with spiritual warfare? And then we have like a comment box. You can just give us your comments. And people have been just saying some amazing things about things that they're going through, and how they need help for themselves or for their family. And so I think we're going to help a lot of people. This course is not just a few prayers you can say and some chants or whatever. No, this is, as I say on the website, this is Delta Force level spiritual warriors. 12 months of courses. We start with the defense. Like when you go into the military, they don't just give you a gun the first day and send you off to battle. No, you start doing push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, learning your limits, running until you can't run anymore. You need to learn yourself, your limits, your weaknesses, and you learn defense. You learn how to protect yourself. That's number one. And I think that's in the first 3 months. And I think that alone is going to be worth the price of the course, just to have your defenses up. So those areas where you're always falling and you're always getting attacked, we're going to help you shore those up. And here's the thing that you aren't going to get from any other course. we're a lot of these other courses, they will just give you blanket ways to do spiritual warfare. No, this is tailored to you. So in the first 3 months, we're going to help you know who you are, because you are not attacked randomly. You are attacked specifically, uniquely, and where you are. These entities know you and they know where to hit you. We're going to help you understand yourself and then identify your weak points and your strongholds. And once you shore those up, you're no longer vulnerable. Then the next part is going on to attack, learning the offensive, learning about who these entities are, how they operate, and the laws that they have to abide by. And we're going to show you how to use that to your advantage. Then the course is going to end with you learning how to replicate this, how you can help others. Now that you've helped yourself, now it's time to help your friends, your family, your spouse, your kids, and teach them what we've taught you. So we're building an army, and that's the whole point of this.
That's awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah,
I
it's
want
like
to
put on your floaty first.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, like, sorry to interrupt.
go ahead.
Dave. I think it's unintentional, but they're starting in April, which is the actual new year.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
the-
Technical. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Was it the Tishri? Is that the right year? The new year? The right month? I think it's because
I think it's supposed to be April, which makes sense just in
14th,
the grand
Tishri
scheme of
14,
things.
I believe.
Oh, I don't even know. I don't know. I just heard that they moved it around. They lied to us. That's all I know. But this conversation that we're going to get into today, just about the nature of the spiritual realm, the existence of the spiritual realm, is actually, I think it'll be a good conjoinder to what you're talking about. But before we even go any further, I want to recommend that people go to Tony Merkel's show, The Confessionals. Listen to your episode, your second episode on The Confessionals that just dropped. Fantastic episode. The first one was on the little season. You, Tony, and Joel did a fantastic job of laying out the argument against it. And now you have your second one. This was recorded a while ago, right, Ed? Like,
Yeah, it was recorded in September because I forgot what I even talked about. I had to.
Well, it was fantastic. I just finished listening to it yesterday, I think, and it's really great. So I recommend people go over there and check that out.
If you can get Tony to go, what?
Yeah.
It's like it because now it's like, I don't want to be rude and say the horrible things like that.
Which one? Which horrible things?
I'll tell you after the show. But
okay, all right.
No, nothing about anyone involved. It's just, it was going to be a bad metaphor that I was going to use. But yeah, it's like making a comedian laugh.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, I was going to say my mind went somewhere else. Yeah, I need help.
If you can give a guy who delves in the spiritual realm constantly something revelatory about the spiritual realm, that's a big thing. Yeah.
Also, another kudos for Ed listening to it. Tony goes, at one point, he goes, I can tell that you're like perceiving what I'm thinking as you're talking.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's like most people aren't do that. You know who didn't do that? Timothy Alberino during our debate.
I don't want to get
straight
into
down.
what he was doing
I'm
during
just
the
saying,
debate. All right.
listen, but it's correct. And
It is true.
It's a big compliment on you, Ed, man. Like, it's like you're talking to people, but you're being perceptive of what they're saying because you're teaching and you're seeing, does this resonate? No.
And
yes,
you also
more
have
of
a good
this, less
sense
of
of when somebody else is going to talk, which is really important in a conversation. So yeah, I hope that people could go over and check that episode out if you want more Ed Mabry. It was a fantastic showing, both those episodes. So I'm glad they're out.
The time
glad
flew.
we
I mean, I
didn't
looked
see
at the
it.
timestamp. It was like two plus hours. Like, I didn't feel like we talked for that long. And there was like so much more I wanted to say. Because I could feel Tony saying, we need to bring this in for a landing. Like, didn't we just start? But that,
at the risk of glazing too much here, and we're going to move on. I'm not going to give you any more compliments after this, but that's my favorite show and one of my favorite people on my favorite show. It was fantastic. It felt like a treat for me and you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure our audience. So go and check that out. Now the conversation that we're going to get into is one that I was eager to have.
Do you want to start it out? Like we were talking a little bit before the show about a topic on that episode where you had like a point of disagreement with just the nature of the fallen, the angels.
Right.
And you actually did mention our friend on there, and you said, I disagree with that. Would you want to extrapolate on that a little? Because I thought that was a fantastic point.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's get into that because you had your debate with him, and I was listening to it last night. I think I listened to probably about 70-80% of it, and then I just got tired and had to go to sleep because I was taking a lot of notes. And just to back up, so this is not personal. I don't know Tim Alberino, I never met him, so I'm not trying to cast aspersions on him personally, but there are some areas where I think he was wrong. And here's the thing: when you hear someone and they are talking a lot about things in an unorthodox manner, and they're being very matter of fact about something, it tells me that this is based on their worldview. And we all have a worldview, and our worldview is based on a central truth. And that central truth is going to shape our worldview, and then the world is going to conform around that. For example, my core worldview that's unshakable is the nature of God and what he in his will for us. The nature of God is that he's always and completely right and just. God will not ever be wrong. He will not ever be unjust. That's the core principle. And the other is his will, and his will is for us to be with him and have fellowship with him for eternity. Those are two things that are rock solid. So that shapes my worldview, and it also shapes how I put everything else in the categories. So when I look at the Bible, I'm looking at it through that lens of, is this helping me get closer to Jehovah or further away? Because his will is for me to get closer to him. So my doctrines, a good doctrine brings you closer to God. A bad doctrine takes you further away from God. Anything that you believe about God that makes him either unrighteous or unjust, you have to discount that. You have to get rid of it. So with Tim, with Tim, listening to him, I took a step back and we were talking about this before the show, and I'm going to get right into what you were talking about with the angels and my point of disagreement with him on Tony's show. But I want to make sure that I give full context. So I want to take a step back and look at what he believes, because he was saying some things that I think were pretty outlandish, in my opinion. Maybe I'm not right, but I disagree with him on things like he was saying that there's no such thing as a spiritual realm. You can't define it. Everything is physical to some degree, and that the angels, the Elohim, they are, for lack of a better term, they're physical. They're like us, and we're like them. That they're just like a higher grade of human being. That they have physical locality. So he was elevating the physical above the spiritual, which he doesn't think exists in I guess the way that people think about it. He kept talking to me about things like, no one is disembodied or ethereal. He was using those terms a lot, disembodied and ethereal, and that this world is the real world, and that the angelic beings are just graduate humans, or we're lesser forms of them. And that they're just, they're smarter than us, they're more powerful than us, but they're just like us, they look like us. And so if anyone has a vision in the Bible where they see an angel that doesn't look human, well, that's not what they really look like. That's just a symbol due to culture and things like that, which I found very odd. And he also said something that's provably wrong, which is that there's no scientific evidence for other dimensions. Because I think you were, Raven, you said something about, well, do you believe that the spiritual realm is extra dimensional? And he said, well, there aren't higher dimensions, or something to that. I think he said something to that effect, that you can't prove that, which, yeah, you can. That's real easy. That science already says this. You can Google that really quickly, that scientists believe that we live in at least 10 dimensions. We have the 3 spatial dimensions of, the length, height, and depth. And then we also have the dimensionality of time. Those are the 3 knowable dimensions, but there are also another 6 dimensions on top of that, including gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear force. They're all curled, as a physicist would tell you, curled to a very small, I think it's like 10 to the minus 66 centimeters. That doesn't matter unless you're really into advanced mathematics, but those dimensions exist. And to say they don't, and to say that scientists, there's no proof of it, means you haven't done any research, which is odd. But that truth and your worldview shaping the world around you. And just really quickly, the way to prove dimensionality, because higher dimensions are tough to understand, the best way to do it is to go down a dimension. We experience 3 dimensions. Well, we know there are 2 dimensions. We can do that easily. You can pick up a piece of paper and make a drawing. You just made a 2-dimensional thing. So obviously there are lower dimensions, and those higher dimensions are exponentially more substantial and complex. An example I think I've given it on this show before. We look at video games. I was growing up in the 80s, and I'm a middle-aged guy. So the 80s, we had video games that were 2-dimensional. We had Pac-Man and Space Invaders, and you could only move up, down, back, forth. That's it. Those were the only moves you could do. You compare that to modern video games, and you name it. I'm not a gamer, so I don't know, but they're 3-dimensional. You're not just going up and down, back and forth. You're going inside of buildings. You're going behind things. You can turn around 360 and see the whole room, a whole world around you. It is exponentially, unbelievably more complex than Space Invaders or Pac-Man. And so if you were to, so imagine, and this is why, and we'll get into this in a bit, when he was saying that when Ezekiel or Isaiah or Daniel were looking at these angelic beings, these Elohim, and describing them in these fantastic ways as being covered with eyes and having 6 wings and looking like, imagine they're looking at beings that are existing in at least 11 dimensions. How do we know they're in 11 dimensions? Because they're not physical. So if our physical world is at least 10 dimensions, well, these entities have to be in at least 11 dimensions. So imagine a 2-dimensional being trying to describe 3 dimensions. Because if you live in a 2-dimensional world, if you live on a flat piece of paper, everything looks like a line. There's no depth. If I were to look at you guys, I would just see a straight line. And if I were able to take this 2-dimensional drawing off of my paper and put him into this world, how much trouble do you think he'd have describing 3 dimensions in this vast 3-dimensional world? Well, that's probably the same or far more difficult for Isaiah and Ezekiel and the Apostle John to describe an 11-dimensional world. So yeah, so them being covered in eyes and having wings and being wheels inside of wheels, they're doing their best to describe higher dimensions which exist. All right, so enough of that. Let's talk about his truth and his worldview. And his worldview, as I said before, is that the physical is dominant, that everything has physical locality, including heaven, including the angels, the Elohim, and they look like us. What does he base that on? He bases that, from what I understand, and again, he's not here to defend himself, so I'm just giving my best understanding. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong with any of this.
And wait, before you go a little bit further, I think it's worth saying it might have been just the contentious nature of the debate that we had with them. But I will admit I have a lot of trouble understanding his worldview at all. And I'm not saying that it's solely on his inability to express his worldview articulately. It could well be because the energy of this conversation was not your typical podcast. It was a debate. It was contentious.
No,
I'm
I
just trying to be
disagree.
gracious as much as possible. I know
Because I've read his book and I told him, I told him on Twitter that 70% of it was coherent. The last 30% I didn't understand. And when I referenced it to friends, they read it and they came back to me with like odd opinions about aliens and things like that, because I thought that last 30% of his book went off the rails.
right. So I think it's fair within this conversation here to say there might be some mischaracterizations of Alberino's idea of things.
I don't know. He wrote it down, David.
Well,
and
I'm just
I read
saying because it's really due to the idea that he did not articulate it in a way that we could come away with any solid points to address. It was very hard to understand.
And I've seen a lot of his material, his books, it's just some of the work he's done with Steve Quayle and the late Tom Horn. I've watched a lot of their videos. So I have some ideas, and Birthright, and I've seen him do a lot of interviews on Birthright. I mean, because I've followed him and Steve and Tom Horn, you know, I agree with a lot of what they were talking about. So I think I have a pretty decent grasp. I think that when he went to Birthright, I think that's when things got off the rails a little bit, in my opinion. And one of the things is that and this is where we get into what I brought up briefly on Tony Merkel's show, was that he believes that the reason that the angels fell, the 200 watchers in Genesis chapter 6 and also in first Enoch, was because they physically lusted after human women sexually. They had a physical desire to have intercourse with them. They thought they were beautiful. They had nice boobs and nice butt and all that kind of stuff. So they wanted to physically have intercourse with them. So if you extrapolate that, okay, well, if that's your truth, if that shapes your worldview, then angels have physical needs, and they're able to physically satisfy them. They must have angelic sex organs. And then you get some confirmation bias to a degree when you look at the sojourn into the promised land, where Jehovah fed the Israelites with manna, and which was called angels' food. And it was called the food of angels. And so, okay, well, that means that they eat. They need sustenance. So they probably also drink. So now you have entities that have physical desires, can satisfy those physical desires, can eat and drink. Wait a minute. These aren't spiritual, disembodied, ethereal things. They're just regular physical. They're more powerful than us. They're greater than us, but they're just like us. And when you have that truth at your core, if that's your core truth, then your worldview changes to accommodate that. So your worldview now is that the spiritual realm must not be what we think it is. Everything is physical. These entities are angels are just graduate human beings, or we're graduate angels, or we're like lower class angels. They're just like us. So when you have that truth that you hold on to and you put a worldview out on it, then everything else has to conform to it. So then when you talk to him, when you go to the Bible and you say, hey, look, man, there are multiple places where angels are described with wings. The seraphim are said very clearly to have 6 wings. Oh, no, that's symbolic. Why? Well, because if it's not symbolic, then angels don't look like men, and then my theory's wrong. And then you said,
Yeah.
so this was when you said, wait a minute, people were taken to the throne room of God, and they saw these things. Oh no, that was just a vision. They weren't really taken there. They were sitting by the river, and they went to sleep and had a dream. It's a vision. Why? Well, because it has to be that way. Because if it's real, if they were really before the throne of God and they really saw these angels, well, then my theory is wrong. My theory can't be wrong. Therefore, I have to change the Bible to make this more symbolic. And that's a lot of what he was doing. And then Top, you even brought up that, well, wait a minute, why do multiple people throughout the centuries have these same visions? How could someone in the Old Testament see the cherubim as having features of lions and eagles and man and ox, and then a couple thousand years later, John the Apostle goes to the throne room of God and he sees a cherubim having these same features? That's not how, and it's not just cultural, because these cultures are separated by thousands of years. I mean, the culture that we have today, the symbolism that we have today is not the same as the symbolism someone 300 years ago would have. So why would you have the same symbolism if it's based on culture that's separated by thousands of years? It doesn't make any sense. However, when you believe that you have the truth, everything has to conform to it. Why? Because if it doesn't, then your truth can't be true. So it's one of those cases where, and this is one of the many issues that I have with the little season people, is that when they believe the little season is true, therefore, if anything disputes that, well, that's okay. We have to change it. Don't change the Bible to fit your theory. Change your theory to fit the Bible, unless you want to elevate your theory above the Bible. And if the Bible says that they look like this, then they look like that. So I'll let you guys talk about that. But then, so that's the disagreement, and the core of it is Genesis chapter 6, and there are 2 big issues with it. One is practical, and the other is biblical. Why he's wrong about them lusting after women. And I want to get to that, but I want to let you guys speak.
So I definitely want to get into that, and I want to get into just instances of scripture where it is clear we're talking about a spiritual realm, or things that would at least bolster that. But to me, and I recognize that it is accusatory in nature to say that somebody is bending scripture to fit their worldview. But it looked to me like the reason that was happening is because there's this big disclosure that's coming, and whatever the reason is, and you can speculate as to that, if you're the listener, he wants to paint this disclosure and this alien phenomenon as being a physical phenomenon, and being unrelated to biblical events. Mm-hmm. And certainly he didn't say it explicitly, but it seems then you would drive a wedge between anything demonic and fallen angel, nature. And these things, these are something that we're unaware of, that are a separate creation, that are, who knows what line of speculation you could draw from that. But he wants to paint that as physical. Mm-hmm. And then I think that is why you then start to bend things that are in scripture to fit more of a symbolic nature.
And create straw man arguments like, the next day going on Blurry Creatures. And the title of that episode is UFOs Are Not Demons. And it's almost like we're saying this this technology, this metal from outer space or whatever is a demon. It's like that. We've never said that. Yeah. This, in the same way, I would never say that this is a demon, but it's quite possibly demonic technology that was given from us.
Or at the very least, demons can interact with it.
Yeah, for sure. They're interacting all the time through this. So I'm like, come on, man.
That's lazy. Weird. It's weird. And it starts to paint a speculative picture that is not very charitable. I can't really figure out why you would be painting that picture, but go on, Ed.
Yeah, and why you're so adamant about it, I think if I were on the show, I don't, and maybe you guys did because I didn't see. I think I missed the last half hour of the show. But what I wanted to ask him, it was okay if there is no spiritual thing, and if there's no spiritual world, and everything is physical, and these people, again, these prophets who said I was taken into the throne room of Jehovah. And they, but no, they were just, they were just, their body was fine. I don't disagree that their bodies may have still been where they were, but their spirit was taken to this realm. So I would ask him, okay, if everything is all physical, what happens when you die? Because I have relatives who've died. They're not here anymore. They're somewhere else. Their body is gone. My aunt, who I love dearly, was like a second mother to me. I think I told you guys this last year, not last year, excuse me. She passed away in late 2024 around Christmas. And she was cremated. Her body's gone. If there's no spiritual realm, where is she?
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for him to explain that. Because everything can't be physical, because my aunt is physically gone. But the Bible clearly says to be absent from the body is to be present with God. So where is she present? And she doesn't have a body. So how does that work?
It was interesting because I can understand the usefulness of definitions in any kind of conversation. It's important to have a baseline for the conversation you're having. But when it comes to the intangible nature of the spirit realm, it's almost as if you were to come into a room and say, there's a demon in the other room, don't go in there. And someone were to say, well, what is a demon? And you get into this back and forth. And it's like, well, what is the composition of a demon? What is the nature of a demon? What is it? And it's like, it almost doesn't matter.
It's like, if you go out there, he's going to kill you.
He's going to kill you. Yeah. If you go into that room, it's going to eat you. So, there comes a point of diminishing returns when it, comes to defining things, right, where once we have a grasp enough on the language, this is sufficient to have a productive conversation. But we just never reach that.
Well, one of the things you said, Raven, and I want to talk about more about the spiritual realm because I want to deal with the Genesis 6 stuff, and I want to talk about the spiritual realm. But I will give you a quick answer that we can, a one-word answer that will require a lot more diving into, because as you said, the mark of someone who's a good teacher is they're able to simplify something complex. What is this? If you were to ask me, what is the definition of the spiritual realm? It's consciousness. That's what spirit is. Spirit is consciousness. What is God? God is spirit. What is spirit? Your consciousness is your intelligence. It's all the intangible things that make you who you are. This body is not me. Who I am. If you just saw my picture, that tells you nothing about me. You want to know who I am? You need to know my thoughts, my memories, my experiences, my worldview, my philosophies, my personality. That's the real me. And that me is way more important than what I physically look like. That tells you nothing about me. My consciousness is real. My consciousness is eternal because it's outside of time. That's how God is eternal, because God is not outside of time. Because God is outside of time. That's what the spiritual realm is. And it's also energy. Our thoughts are electric. So, and that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is that energy, and that's what the spiritual realm is what the ancients call the ether. It's the same thing. But we'll get more into that. But let me just wrap up the issues that I have with his interpretation of Genesis 6 and the motivation of the angels. So what he said this, didn't just say this on this, on your episode. I've heard him say it before. I think it was about a year ago on the Michael Knowles show. I think it's on Daily Wire. I forget where Knowles is, but I know that Knowles is a Catholic. Good guy. I like him. He's a very reasonable guy. But in Catholicism, he was interviewing Alberino, and Knowles is a Catholic. And in Catholics, they don't really talk much about the Nephilim. They aren't taught very much about it. So when Alberino was explaining to Knowles the whole aspect of angels procreating with women, Knowles, to his credit, asked a lot of good questions. And his main question was, well, why would they do this? Because, in Catholicism, angels are just these creatures that with big bird wings who fly around and praise God and don't do anything else. More or less, I'm obviously being a little facetious there. But so the idea of them procreating with women was completely left field. And he asked him why. And Alberino said what he said to you guys. It was lust. They were like a bunch of frat boys out for a good time. They see the daughters of Adam and they're like, "Whoa, these chicks are hot. Oh, I'm getting an angelic erection. I got to go down and hit that." That's, I mean, essentially that's what he was saying, that they were, I'm using vernacular obviously, but that's what he was saying. So but that's a huge problem with that. Here's the problem with it. We will all acknowledge, including Tim, because I've read his material, we acknowledge that the angels, the Elohim, were created first. Okay, they were created before man. So if angels have a drive for physical sex, then that means that God must have created them with a sex drive. God doesn't do anything without a reason. What would be the reason for God to give angels a sex drive? Well, let's look at the next set of things that God created intelligently, human beings. He gave us a sex drive, obviously. Why? There was a reason. First thing God said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. He said, go have sex, make some babies, and fill the earth, replenish the earth. So he gave them and it makes sense that he would give them a sex drive. He would give them a drive to do his will. And his will, very clearly stated, multiply, fill the earth. Here is a drive that will make that pleasurable for you and will bond you together and just, he gave them a sex drive. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. So what sense would it make to give an angel a sex drive? If angels don't have sex with each other, I mean, no, they don't, because Jesus himself said the angels in heaven, in this make-believe spiritual realm, do not marry. What is marriage? Marriage is sex. I know we've had that discussion before. In the Bible, there's only 3 kinds of sex: marriage, adultery, fornication. There is no such thing as sex before marriage. Sex is marriage. Sex confirms the marriage covenant. If you don't break the covenant and you have sex with someone else while you're still in the marriage covenant, that's adultery. And fornication in the Bible is always sex as part of spiritual intimacy with another entity. If you look at fornication in the Bible, the Israelites, God would tell them, you guys are committing fornication with the gods of the Amorites and the Hittites and all. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because they were physically having, yes, there were sexual rights as part of that worship, but they were being spiritually intimate with false gods. Those are the 3 kinds of sex in the Bible. So again, marriage is sex. Jesus saying the angels in heaven don't have sex. If the angels in heaven don't have sex, why would God give them a sex drive? The only way they could if they don't have sex with each other, the only other entities they're having sex with are human beings. And God clearly doesn't like that. Every angel who had sex with a human being in the Bible, they are, if you look at the book of Enoch, which Al Barino quoted quite a bit, they're locked up forever. They've doomed themselves. So why would God give the angels a drive, and a strong drive, as we all know? Sex drive is very powerful, and the only outlet for that drive is to be with someone in a way that God hates and will damn you. Does that sound just? No, it will be unjust for God to give you a drive, and the only way you can satisfy that drive is to do something he doesn't want you to do that will send you to eternal damnation. God is not unjust. That's why that's bad doctrine, because that bad doctrine drives you away from God. God is righteous and just. If you believe he would give angels a sex drive illegitimately, then that is unjust. That's not God. So that's the practical reason. Now let's look at the biblical reason why this is incorrect. Because again, Alberino said it was lust. Let's look at what the actual verse says. Genesis chapter 6. When man began to multiply upon the earth, and women were born unto them, the sons of God, the Benah Elohim, saw that the daughters of men, Benoth Adam, were, your Bible maybe say fair or beautiful, and they took of them wives of whoever they chose. Let's go back to that word, fair, beautiful, desirable. That word in Hebrew is the word tov. Tov does not mean physically attractive. Tov means good, but it means good to the point where it means acceptable. It means meets the requirements. Think about when you were taking your driving test. You passed the test, tov. You met the requirements. So it should be properly translated. The sons of God, the angels, saw that the women of earth were acceptable. They met the requirements. Didn't say lust. There's a different word for lust. The word love is hakav. If you look up lust, that's what different word. It does not mean physical lust.
Now, Ed.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
There was maybe a month ago, I got into like an argument with Matt about angels. You remember this?
I remember that. Yeah.
I was like, angels ain't shit. This is the argument just to like harass Matt. But the reason I was saying, like, we were reading the story of Elijah, and Elijah's on the mountain or in the cave, and an angel comes and makes him breakfast, and he rolls over and he's like, thanks for the breakfast. And angel's like, yo, get up. And he's like, and it's like, hey, that's an angel there. Like, wouldn't he be more surprised?
Yeah. Like they
Like,
typically have to be
oh,
like,
fear not. Yeah.
And Elijah's not even, he doesn't seem bothered.
And Matt was like, no, Elijah was just that in tune with the spiritual realm. And I agree with that. But I also think that maybe Elijah understood intimately what an angel was. So like, as you're describing this sexual drive, an angel, they have their motives, but he's looking at it, them are looking at this sexual drive as just pure utility, rather than human, any kind of emotion that goes with it, or even like the luxury of, the feeling of an orgasm. It's like, it's not about that. It's just straight utility. Yes. And that's kind of what I was trying to express to Matt. I was like, that's probably why when he looked at him, he's like, yeah, just make me breakfast. It's like, because like, and they are amazing and they are powerful, but it's just kind of like, I know what you do. You know what? Like you deliver messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do war.
You're a ministering spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. You just watch, like, and it's messed up to talk to them like that, because they'll slay you. And I got to have some respect for them. But I'm like, in a sense, this is what they do. They're just like,
well, maybe it's not dismissive. Maybe that's how you're supposed to treat them. Because the worst thing is when you don't believe them, and then you see them, and then you're blown away by them. And then this leads to like some sort of worship because you're in awe. But if Elijah knows these things exist, he believes in God, he has a personal relationship with God, he knows the nature of this thing, you're not supposed to glaze it.
Don't glaze it.
Don't glaze it. Just like,
no, you're not, no, do not worship. When you look at Revelation, when John, when this angel was showing John the New Jerusalem, and John was so overwhelmed, he went and worshipped the angel, and the angel said, "Don't do it." And if you look at what those words mean in the Greek, he's like, "No." He was like, I don't. We get in trouble when we get worshipped. Stop it. Mm-hmm. It was like, remember, he basically saying, "Cut it out."
What an incredible title! It's like where you're talking about worship. And like, is this heroin to angels?
Yeah.
And actually, I'm gonna tap you soon because I'm doing a worship, a whole thing on worship and what it is, a presentation, and I'm fleshing it out. But some of your explanations, I'd like to have the sound bites.
Yeah,
for that,
but happy to.
That is an interesting idea, though. That's why Elijah behaved that way, because it's like, okay, if you're not supposed to glaze them, and if it's like worship is not what they need, or else they're gonna fall, then how are you supposed to react to them? Just like they're there, like they're doing their job. They're a messenger. You're here. You're doing your thing. Thanks a lot,
but I'm going back to sleep.
I need about 15 more minutes. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right. See you in a minute. So these Elohim, they saw that the women were, they were acceptable. They met the requirement. Requirement for what? So what did they do next? They took them as wives. Notice what they married them.
Yeah.
They entered into a legal marriage covenant. Because if they were just there for a good time, just to get their rocks off, the Bible would have said, well, then they fornicated with any women, because that would have been fornication, sex,
rape.
Spiritually. It didn't say that. They married them. And we know that from the book of Enoch, because in that culture, I'm sure we've talked about this before, as part of the marriage culture, the first thing you do, you would ask the father of the bride-to-be for permission. If he gave permission, then you would give him and the family and the wife to be gifts, which
dowry.
That's how they did it. So they entered into a legal marriage. Why? Because they were using God's laws against him. God's law of marriage, of that bond, because they wanted to have legal progeny. They weren't there because they just wanted to get off. They were there because they wanted the Nephilim. They wanted their own kids. Why? God's law again. Remember, the earth was the purview of Adam and Eve. God said, the earth is yours. The angels wanted the earth back. They used to have it before the original fall, which is series to get into that. But the bottom line is these angels wanted the earth back. Jehovah's law said that the earth is now under the authority of Adam and Eve, of human beings. What are human beings? We're spiritual, physical hybrids. God formed Adam from the dust of the earth and then breathed a spirit, the Ruach, into him. So that means that the earth can be claimed legally by a creature that is part physical, part spiritual. The angels, again, 11 dimensions. They can see way more than we could. They saw the women and they said, you know what? We can impregnate them. We can make our own physical, spiritual hybrids. They will be answerable to us if we get rid of the rest of humanity. And under God's law, we could have proxy control of the earth through them. That's what they wanted to do. It wasn't about getting booty. It was about
Yeah.
getting the Earth back, which Alberine actually said he believed like some kind of like Earth conquest. I forgot the terminology he used, but it is a battle for the Earth, and that's what they wanted.
A lot of the strangeness is like he still acknowledges much of the overlap, but he doesn't see it as overlap. It's like he is unironically describing correlation without drawing the correlation actively as he's saying it. So yeah, it's like he's talking about Earth conquest, or let's say the hybridization program, which I know the alien thing isn't completely your wheelhouse, but we go pretty deep into that. And between like, let's say that Earth conquest. Okay. So maybe like the birthright, like the inheritance of the Earth. That's interesting. And then the hybridization program where they're trying still to bridge this gap between us and them, maybe for that inheritance purpose. Like you just laid out, it mirrors exactly what was happening with the fallen angels. So that's another odd, coincidence in the grand scheme of things. Coincidence isn't even a fair thing to use. That word isn't a fair thing to use because we're describing something rather unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A hybridization program between us and something that is non-human is appearing once again. Okay. All right. So there's another correlation. And then of course the massive overlap between all of the patterns and elements of a demonic interaction or encounter versus all of the pattern and overlap of a abduction experience. It's almost a one-to-one. The sleep paralysis, the shadows, the feeling of mortal doom, all of these things, they pile up on top of each other. And you've got a series of coincidences that like, it would be almost fraudulent to have a conversation and not seriously entertain that this is the same phenomenon, especially given, contrary to his points, it's not settled. The facts aren't unanimously agreed upon by the experts. This is a field of study that we're only just now being allowed to have in any serious way. And so all things are on the table, and those are pretty unbelievable coincidences.
Needless to say, Ed, you weren't getting on Blurry Creatures.
It's not happening. I'm sorry.
Whether you talk to us or not.
Sorry.
It's just
Once
it's just
again,
your worldview.
I takes another L for associating with us.
So sorry. Well,
There were more
technically-
W's and L's, guys.
But technically,
I
your
did find- I mean,
worldview.
Well, I did find it really quick. I found a lot of things he was saying a little surprising, but one of the things I really found surprising was that he did not latch on to what you were saying, Raven, which is, hey, this looks like a repeat of what was going on in Genesis 6. I mean, they're taking, he said himself, they're taking the eggs from women, they're taking the semen from men, and they're doing stuff. So how is this any different? Maybe it's mechanically different than what happened in Genesis chapter 6, but functionally, isn't this kind of the same thing? The fact that he didn't seem to just latch onto that was a little surprising.
Well, not just that. It's not the fact that he didn't latch on to Raven's talking points or Top's talking points. He's friends with L.A. Marzulli. There's a DVD right there of yours with L.A. Marzulli in it. So you know this guy. That's his talking point.
And you know this theory.
We're only quoting Quayle. I'm quoting Missler.
Yeah, we're standing on the shoulders of giants that came before us, reiterating their
I'm quoting
research.
Ed. You're not necessarily disagreeing with me. You're disagreeing with the people who have done the research that I've read, and also the Bible. Like that was like a big stopping point with that first 45 minutes. We didn't get anywhere because I was like, wait. You're just like now you're just disagreeing straight with the Bible. And I'm like, this is a huge problem. So I don't know what to make of that.
And you guys know that I'm a big proponent of Michael Heiser. He's one of my mentors, but he's not the end all be all. There's some things I disagree with Heiser on, but I mean, the guy was a pretty serious scholar. I mean, multiple degrees, PhDs. I think he knew what he was talking about when it comes to Semitic languages. And if this guy said that there's biblical evidence that there's a spiritual realm, I think it's really dismissing that out of hand. That takes a lot of cojones for someone who is not similarly educated.
There were a lot of things.
Tim. He's a smart guy, but Heiser was next level.
Yeah, there were a lot of things in that conversation that we simply could not address because, especially Matt and Top gave me a lot of space for this one thing that I really wanted to drive home, and he made so many points that if we started to address everything, we simply would have never gotten anywhere. A lot of the things that he was asking about, what he defined a spiritual realm, that's an entire episode.
And I took the bait on that, because I just felt like that was just too egregious.
All of these things were almost, in my opinion, created as bait. But the one thing that we didn't get to, or one of many things we didn't get to, was this idea of the name of Jesus stopping alien abductions, to which I know Alberino says, but not all the time. Now,
And he's
first,
right.
well, before we even go on to the he's right, and I know where Ed's head's going already. I heard him say it on Merkel, and it's something that I've been talking about that I learned from Ed, was that, first off, you need to stop and say, why does it work at all? If I'm getting attacked by a tiger, the name of Jesus not working is not a surprise. And I don't know how many times the name of Jesus has worked in a tiger attack, but I can tell you that it is a consistent theme, with not always landing, but it is still a consistent theme within alien abduction experiences for the entire thing to cease when calling out in the name of Jesus Christ. So the fact that that happens at all immediately allows you to put aliens, at least speculatively, into the camp of demons. The camp of demons. We can now seriously entertain that. And I know that.
No, you're retarded.
Well, I know I'm retarded, but I also know that within the Bible, the two instances that I think are really eye-opening when it comes to, not always being able to stop a demonic encounter or something like that in the name of Jesus is the 7 sons of Sceva not being able to get it done. And then, of course, Jesus himself saying some of these can't be casted out. They need to come out through prayer and fasting. And so obviously now I had somebody recently tell me that was added 2,000 years after the fact. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. That alone, the fact that they ever stop, and it's not just like every once in a while. It's like some people are doing this within the body of abductee testimony. This is coming up more than half of the time. More than half of the attempts to stop this in the name of Christ are successful. Full stop.
Right.
We need to address that, because that allows you to then put demons into the same camp as aliens and look at them as the same thing until proven otherwise.
Well, yeah, you guys know the whole alien thing is not necessarily my lane. I mean, if you want to know my quick thoughts on it, I will say that I don't believe that these things, whatever they are from another planet, millions of light years away. I don't believe there's biological life elsewhere in the universe for one reason, because there's no evidence for it. People say, well, couldn't God have done that? Yeah, we can't work on what God could have done. We only know what he's told us. And if there's life elsewhere in the universe that God created, then my first question is, are they sinless? If they sin, then did Jesus die for them? Those are interesting questions. But biologically, evolution doesn't explain how life came here, let alone some other planet somewhere out there, because you have the anthropic principle that there are like over 130 ways that the earth is uniquely fine-tuned for humanity, and that if things were off in the slightest, life would be impossible. If the earth was a little closer or further from the sun, it would be impossible. It'd be too hot or too cold. If the moon was a little further or a little closer, there would be either not enough tidal activity to cleanse the earth and the waters. There would be too much tidal activity. There was a little bit more.
Also wouldn't be the same exact scale when you have a eclipse. Like, that's an unbelievable coincidence that they happen to be
coincidence. I mean,
totally different size but perfectly scaled to each other.
If there was a little bit more or less oxygen in the atmosphere, if there's more oxygen, there would be instant fires would be spontaneously bursting. If there was not enough oxygen, there wouldn't be enough to make the ozone effect, which would ultraviolet radiation. Again, you can go on and on forever. The point is, when someone says, when you hear on the news, oh, scientists have discovered an Earth-like planet that's roughly the size of Earth, with a sun that's roughly the size of our sun, that's roughly doesn't work. It has to be exact. So much so that scientists have, I think Hugh Ross, who's a scientist, he did the odds of all those things, not all of them, I think only a third of 2/3 of them, of the anthropic principle happening by random chance. It was a chance in less than 1 in 10 to the minus 122. That's a 1 followed by 122 zeros. And scientifically speaking, anything that has less than a chance of 1 in 10 to the minus 50th, meaning 1 followed by 50 zeros, is considered scientifically impossible. So that said, why, if these things are not demonic, and by demonic I'll define it for Tim if he's listening, which he probably isn't.
What is it? What does that mean? What is a demon?
Demons mean that they are spiritual entities. They are either Elohim themselves, or they are the offspring of Elohim, the Nephilim, because Nephilim occurred after Genesis chapter 6. It says that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also after that. So they're probably Nephilim. And if they weren't, then if you're an alien from the planet Xenon 12, why the hell do you care about Jesus? Why would Jesus's name do anything to you? You just, at the point you just made, Raven, it doesn't make any sense.
Also, I want to just congratulate you because that might have been the fastest defining of demon.
It was a relief.
I mean, I thought you were going to go on for at least 48 more minutes on what a demon was. That's crazy. I didn't know it was possible to define.
I felt like a battered wife. Like once he started, I'm like,
I was like, oh, here it comes. But then he finished concisely, and I understood it. Yeah, I think that alone, if that was the only correlation between aliens and demonic entities or things that are in the opposition of God, if that alone was the only thing, it would be worth keeping them in the same lens until proven otherwise. But it just mounts. It builds and it builds and it builds. And, we've talked to more than a few people who have had supernatural experiences of, you might call it just the NHI variety, right? Non-human intelligence, which we're always rebranding these things. Mm-hmm. And the similarities between just demonic encounters and encounters with virtually anything else that you might even toss in the alien camp are tremendous. They're absolutely tremendous. So I don't know how my main issue is just I don't have so much of an issue with the difference in theology. If we can agree that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, come to die for our sins and give us a path to redemption, that's great. The other stuff we can talk about, but it's when you start speaking definitively, and you start to say things like, that are reminiscent of the science is settled, trust the experts. It's a very, very strange language to use around this phenomenon. And as you said, there are so many people, we named a few of them, whether it's L.A. Marzulli or it's Heiser, Gary Wayne, there are people that are very serious, and you could have disagreements on various details. That's fine. But you cannot say that they're not serious researchers who have dedicated, giant swaths of their life to this very same topic.
Can I just say, I want to move the conversation a little bit because he brought up something that I want to dismiss right away because it comes from the Kabbalistic teachings of a rabbi, which I don't agree with at all. But Judges 5:23, I'll pull up the scripture here so you can check it out. Curse ye Miraz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to help the Lord against the mighty. And he's saying that Miraz is another planet. Well, this is what Alberino is saying, and this is what this rabbi is saying.
This is when I asked him if there were any neutral aliens. We know that there are some that are in opposition to the kingdom of God, some that are in alignment. Is there any neutral ones? And that was kind of a trick question, and I think he stepped in it.
This is the scripture that he brought up, and he says, well, these are aliens from the planet Miraz, and they happen to be neutral, but then it also says here within the scripture that they are cursed, so therefore you can't be neutral. What do you think about this scripture at all? Like, what is Miraz?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I can do some research and get back to you because that's my understanding. Because I haven't read Judges in a while, cover to cover. But my understanding is that they were one of a tribe of people.
What's interesting?
But I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me.
Look, this is a novel moment, guys. This is something I gave you flowers for. You weren't here. We were talking about you on a previous episode, and I said Ed, in contrast, specifically to Tim, is the kind of guy where if you pose something to him and he's unfamiliar with it, he will say, guys, listen, is this for the audience who's listening, especially the Patreon members?
Play that back.
Seriously. I said this just the other day. Ed will say, actually, I'm not sure. I will research that and get back to you. And then what I said is the next time we have Ed on in the pre-show, he will say, hey guys, remember that thing you said? I researched it. And that's actually really fascinating. And unlike Tim, where if you say something, he goes, no, not true, never heard of it, not true. The science is settled. I disagree. Guys, I can't, I did not expect this moment to happen on this show. I said this 2 episodes ago, Ed, that you are the type of guy, despite all of your body of research, you'll come on this show, you'll have thoughtful conversations with us, you'll explain things in a way that we can understand, and if we should happen to bring something to your attention that you're not familiar with, you will say, I don't know, I will research it and get back to you. Unbelievable. If nothing else, Ed Mabry is consistent. Then once again, I think that's the mark of somebody who's not threatened. Your worldview is not threatened by information that comes in that you're unaware of. It's just a simple matter of, well, I'll get back to you on that. I'll look into that. I'm one man. How could I possibly know all these things? But some people, you talk to them, and there is no room in their game for not knowing a thing. And if a thing comes across their table that they don't know and it doesn't fit into their narrative, they're going to dismiss it. And that's the name. That's the end of the game.
It's just extremely crazy because, yeah, as I look it up, it's something that I haven't even researched because I thought it was kind of stupid. But it's saying, yeah, Meroz was likely a town, an Israelite town. And he's like, nah, dog.
That was a planet of space Jews.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was my initial thought on it, that it's a proper name. It's capitalized. So it's either I don't think it's a person in the way it looks in context. It looks like a tribe or people. So I'll look into it. But I mean, you know what's the saddest thing you just said, Raven, is that you have to call it out. That should be everyone's point of view, that I don't know everything.
Right.
The fact that it's rare is more of a commentary on, I guess, the way people are than anything else.
I think I know significantly less than I don't know. And that becomes glaringly obvious to me. And I'm not like a dedicated researcher. I'm not writing books, but I've been into these things for 20 years. I'm 35 years old. For almost 2/3 of my life, I have been fascinated. 2/3 of my life. I'm bad at math too. Have been fascinated by topics like these. And I've been studying it enough that I, do a show and I dedicate all my time and resources to it currently. And all I'm ever shown is that there is more under the sun that I don't know than I do know. And that is just the nature of the human condition. And when I smell somebody that doesn't believe that, all of my alarms go off. There's something wrong with that. I'm not saying that, there's no such thing as a greater intellect than mine. Certainly there are those who know infinitely more than me, but I would also, believe that those people, they know less than they don't know, just like me, but just to a probably a better degree in their defense. You know what I mean? So it's very strange.
The first place I'm going to go is I think that Heiser did a series on judges, and I have a lot of his library. I'm going to go there and see what he says about it because he knows the languages. I'm going to start with there, and I'm probably going to do my own research and I'll find out what it means. But again, I don't think it's another planet. I don't know that for sure because context wise, where else is he talking about other planets?
Yeah, I don't know. Once again, I got to highlight that. What a novel idea. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Biblical Hitman's actually in the chat. What's up, guys?
Shout out to Steven. What's
up,
He said
that the doctrine does come.
I was just out of the show a while ago.
Steven's the man. He's got to get back.
He'll be here next Friday.
There we go.
So yeah, the doctrine's taught out of the Zohar with its mystical interpretation. Yeah, I know it's taught by a rabbi that does Kabbalistic teachings as well, and that dude is kind of like dismissed by the Judaic community at large. Anyway, it's just his theory, and it's very interesting. And it's like you'd pick some weird abstract theory because it does fit your worldview. And it's like, man, what a dangerous way to be.
Yeah. And it's one thing to bring it up in the realm of just fascinating topics. Yeah. Hey, I don't know how to answer that, but you want to know something that is fascinating? Here's this. And you go, oh, that's weird. So anyway, you know what I mean? But it becomes part of his narrative.
Well, I knew a guy back when I was, hanging out with Chuck Missler, who was kind of in that circle, who believed, and he might not be wrong, he believed that during the initial rebellion of the angels before the Earth was recreated, that they all had, they occupied all of the planets, the Mercury, Venus, Mars, whatever. And so he firmly believed that. And so there's the passage in, I believe it's in Ezekiel 28, when he's talking about the fall of one of the passages about the fall of Satan. One of the things when God is giving that lament, he says, you were perfect, you were upright, blah, blah, blah. He says, you walked among the stones of fire. He said, well, the stones of fire, those are planets. That's what he means. He means that Satan walked among the planets. Like, do you believe that because that's what it says in context, or because confirmation bias, it supports your theory that the angels ruled over the planets, and Satan was over Saturn, I think he said. And like, all right, dude, I mean, it's interesting, but you have to be really careful to not make your worldview and your theory shape the rest of the Bible, because again, it could be wrong. And my biggest problem and again, let me just be clear, I have no reason not to believe that Timothy Alberino is a Bible-believing Christian, that he is saved, that he believes in Jesus for the salvation of his sins. He's never said anything that will lead me to doubt that. So that's not the problem I have. The problem I have is, like I said, with bad doctrine, because bad doctrine takes you further away from God. So while I think that, again, I think he's doing his best, I will err on the side of saying that I think he's sincere and that he is trying to do what's best for the kingdom of God. But I think that one idea of the women being the angels being lustful, and God subsequently, I mean not subsequently, but God having to create them with a sex drive, makes God unjust. And if you think God's unjust, then that is taking you further away from knowing who he really is. So that's really the issue, is with that doctrine.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, in Tim's defense, one of the best moments of the show, I thought, was when he talked about testing the spirits, and he specifically talked about Jesus saying, who is it that you say that I am? And it's like that was huge. Like, I do believe when he's saying you need to be rooted in the gospel, he's absolutely correct. My only issue that I was trying to point out to him was, like, I don't know how you're in lockstep with what is, to me, a very obvious propaganda piece, meaning the age of disclosure, and how you're dismissing Christians who call this demonic, and how that correlates with being rooted in the gospel. Because the example that I use is, if I say the Antichrist will come from disclosure, and you say aliens or demons, and I think to myself, does he mean like the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim? I wouldn't ridicule that person. I would be like, you're very close, dude. Like, you're very close. You're over the target. Here's a little bit more information to kind of refine that. But, like, yeah, dude, yeah, they're not good. You know what I mean? So there would be camaraderie in that expression. I think the Antichrist is going to come from it. You think they're demonic. Let's talk about this. Let's not dismiss and say that you're an idiot and all this other stuff. It's kind of bizarre. And so, but.
Well, Ed brings up a really good point, though, something that I need to think about, because obviously, like, I'm not a great Christian, and I don't think that Timothy Alberino was wrong for pointing that out. But this idea of, like, where your doctrine is, like what your foundation is, if that has a little bit of rot in it, what does that extrapolate to? And, like, for us on the outside, we're, like, obviously pointing at him and saying it extrapolates to a book that leads people here and there, and it makes you look like a fed. But then I got to ask myself too, what does that make me look like? Because I have some rot somewhere as well in my foundation, and I have to continue to, like, turn these rocks over, and I mess up all the time. Just talking with Timothy Alberino was a mistake, in my opinion, because I didn't want to do it, number one, but number two, it kind of, like, brings out this side that I've said that I put away. I don't want to do this, like, mocking, especially to somebody that might be trying their best. But I don't know. I was put in a situation where I had to. So it's like, okay, that is rot. That's rot from my end. And it's not what's good. So I don't know.
Yeah, we've talked before many times that, there are things that I believed 5 years ago that I don't anymore, because I was wrong. We all have to continue to grow. But as long as you have the foundation of knowing who God is, or continue to learn who he is and who he's not, I think that should be your foundation. That should be your cornerstone, and everything else can fall away around it, because all the other stuff doesn't really matter. Like, I've changed what I believe about the rapture. I used to be hardcore believing one thing about the rapture, and then someone smarter than me, with John Lenhard in this case, pointed me in the direction of, hey, you know what? The Bible talks about more than one rapture. So why do you just pick the one you like best? And I was like, oh, okay. So the point is that we always have to continue. And once I understood that, it brought me closer to God, because it told me, okay, that it actually makes sense that God would do it this way. But I want to wrap up with one thing that I mentioned before. Don't want to leave people hanging. I talked about how I give a little more clarity to what the spiritual realm is, and maybe one of the areas that obviously I differ with Tim on, and I think that listening to him, I think one of the issues that he has is that he elevates the physical over the spiritual, and not from a theological standpoint, but from a scientific standpoint, because he kept talking about the spiritual realm as this ethereal, not real sort of thing. And we've had this conversation before, that I believe is the exact opposite. Not that he believes that this realm is the real. This table in front of me is the real world. This world is solid, and the so-called spiritual realm is ethereal and fluffy, which may be why he has such trouble wrapping his mind around its existence, because he has the wrong impression that it's this wavy thing. And these angels are they're strong and they're powerful, and they have vehicles and technology. So how can they be wispy and ethereal? Well,
I just want to say that within that testimony, body of testimony from people who, go to different realms and experience different entities, how often do you get back, the place that I went to, even in near-death experiences, was more real than this place? The colors were more vivid. Things were more.
Yes.
This place that we exist in is somehow dulled and toned down in comparison to these other places that people go.
Devil's avocado. Why do they want to come here so bad?
Avocado.
Right. So, so I'll just briefly give something I've talked about in detail on this show before, and also on Faith by Reason and in my creation series. And that is, if you look at, what makes up our world, it's atoms. That's our basic building block. When you get down to the atomic structure, the nucleus of the atom, if you look in your high school textbook, whatever, you see this nucleus, and then you have like an electron rotating maybe like an inch away from it. Well, that's off by a scale of 100,000 to 1. If you were able to enlarge the nucleus of an atom to the size of the head of a pin, and go to a football field, take that ink pen, and put a dot at the 50-yard line, those electrons are circling in each end zone. That means 99.9% of it is empty space. If you were to blow it up to the size, the nucleus to the size of a baseball, the electrons will be circling about 7 miles away in diameter. So mostly nothing. The electrons themselves, they're just electric. They only have inferred weight. They are weightless. So they just have a static electric charge of negative, which is why we have the illusion of solidity, because you have a bunch of negatively charged electrons that repel others. So that's why both of my hands are made of atoms, electrons spinning, and they repel each other, which is why my hand can't pass through my other hand. Then you get to the proton. The proton, when you break it down, it's made up of quarks. Quarks are vibrations. So what we think is solid is mostly empty space, and it's made up of light and vibration. We live in an electric simulation, which I think Tim actually I think he agrees with that. So if we live in a simulation, we're simulating something else. What are we simulating? We're simulating that spiritual realm, which is more real than us. And the analogy I like to give to help people wrap their minds around that is, you get in an airplane, you're flying, you look out the window, you see these big, billowy, fluffy clouds. Looks like if you jumped out of the plane, you would just land on them softly, and you just, it'd be like a big, big cushion. But we know that's not the case, because they're made of water vapor. You would pass right through them because you're more solid than them. In order for them to support your weight, you'd have to lose a lot of mass to be equal to or less than the mass of the cloud. Then you could interact with it physically. It's the same thing with the angelic realm. When an angel or an Elohim materializes, they don't become more solid. They become less solid to interact with us. So they are more real. That's why in many cases, when an angel appears in all their glory, people see them go into a coma. Daniel said, I fell down like I was dead. He went into a coma. That's how much he could not perceive that angel in all their glory. Yes, they can also appear as regular human beings. They do that for our sake. They give up that first estate, as is called in the book of Jude, to interact with us. But when they are in all their glory, we can't take it. So the spiritual realm is more real than the physical realm. And if you understand that, then you shouldn't have a problem with this realm of these powerful beings being a completely different realm. And I'll say this last analogy. So I hope if Tim's hate watching this, maybe he'll get this. On Earth, we are land animals. We are land creatures, rather. We also have the oceans. The oceans are a different realm. We can't. We can go into the ocean for a little bit. We can swim around, but we can't go all the way into it, because that's a different realm that we are not equipped to dwell in. It's the same thing with the spiritual realm. We can have a vision. Some of you guys talked about DMT and taking psilocybin or whatever. We can kind of dabble. We can play around in the tide pools, but we can't go all the way in there, because we're not equipped for it. When Isaiah and Ezekiel and Daniel and John and Paul are having these visions, they're playing in the tide pool of the spiritual realm. So they see some stuff and they see what they can, but they can't go all the way in there, because it is a different realm that they're not equipped to be a part of. So there are different realms. But you have to understand and accept that, because the Bible makes it clear. Like, as I said, where do the dead go? Where is Jehovah's throne? It's not on another planet somewhere. It's all around us. The spiritual realm is here. We just can't see it. We can't encounter it because it is so much more real than we are.
Another crazy example you had me thinking of is like in this physical realm that we're in, if you took an ant and you dropped it from that plane, I wonder if it would bounce off the cloud, but it does something called terminal velocity because of its size and being in the realm that was created for things that are generally our size. It'll fall, but it will only reach a certain speed and it won't splat.
Right.
So you can drop it off.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not quite.
Hey, dude, that was smart.
I know, I'm kind of smart.
That was good, dude.
Animalology.
I like that. What's it called? Terminal velocity?
Yeah,
yeah, dude.
Yeah, so
That
it's
was
like the laws of physics for just an ant within this physical realm, it doesn't apply to them because they are very different than us, just atomically speaking, what they're composed of. So it's like now we're talking about an angel in another realm. How could we be so sure about these things?
Yeah.
Oh, let me give you one more that you guys brought up on that top. I think you brought up on the show with Alberino. You talked about the when Elisha, the successor of Elijah in 2 Kings, he and his servant were surrounded by the Syrian army, and he said, and his servant was freaking out. Oh, it was Matt. Okay. And the servant was freaking out, and Elisha said, those who are with us are greater than those who are with them. And he was like, he didn't get it. So he prayed. He said to God, open his eyes. In other words, let him see more, not less. Let him see a greater realm. God, he didn't say, hey, God, dim his eyes so he can see this ethereal, fluffy realm. No, he said, open his eyes so he could see reality. Yeah. And so he had to be gifted to see more in order to see the spiritual realm, not less. The spiritual realm is more real.
I got to tell you, even in that moment, I can't remember because of the way that he was talking at the time, whether or not he agreed or disagreed with that. That was a lot of the issue. And it almost became apparent to me during this that there is a point of diminishing returns on even information in some ways. If you're inundated by information that you cannot process and put into perspective, it's a burden. It almost felt like a burden. Like it was like a guy who has so many thoughts going on in his head and none of them are serving him anymore. He can't articulate them. I find that a lot of my ideas, the way that I organize them is through speech. It's the way that I learn is through conversation. The way that I organize my thoughts is by saying them out loud. And if he's anything like me, then that was showing me like your thoughts are incoherent. Your worldview seems to be incoherent. And I don't know. It's a bit of a curse, I think. I don't know if that was just because of the context of having this conversation with us, maybe feeling that it was a bit adversarial. We did get to this place by mocking him and dressing like him. And so I could see how that doesn't lend itself to a nice, smooth conversation. But just the fact of the matter remains, as I'm listening to him try to elaborate on any of his views, it feels like if what he was saying is any reflection of what's going on in his mind, it's kind of chaos. It's disjointed chaos. And I don't know. It's not the guy that I was familiar with when I was watching these documentaries. I just wonder if it's kind of one of those cautionary tales of like leaning on your own understanding or trying to, I guess, champion your own intellect to the extent that you.
I want to ask you a question. Because about 5 minutes into the show, I had a question, and that was, aside from you, Raven, why did anyone agree to do this? Because I'm looking at his demeanor, I'm looking at Top's demeanor, and the only one who seemed to be having any fun was Raven. I mean, the other Alberino looked miserable. He looked like he didn't want to be there. Top looked like he wanted to just throw a punch at him at any moment. And I was like, why did he agree to be on this? He doesn't seem happy to be here. And I'm just messing with you, Top. But with Alberino,
it was true.
It looked like he didn't want to be there. I'm like, did he lose a bet? Why did he end up on this show?
We did this as like a Make-A-Wish for Matt.
That was really it. Matt loves it. Look, I'm going to be honest. I was asking myself that question too.
Well, no, I mean, listen, when he asked initially for the debate, I spoke with David and I was like, what comes of this? And it's like nothing, a whole lot of nothing. We already spoke with him on the show previously, like a year and a half ago. And what happened with that was just like, we butted heads. he kind of decided to back off. It was like we were arguing about aliens again.
Yeah, and I think he was just kind of like
He
not
had
wanting
enough.
to argue, and he was like, okay, I
Like,
see that could be potentially
whatever.
true.
And I'm like, so we're going to have this same conversation with this guy, except for like this time he's going to try to, I don't know, do something embarrass, whatever. I was like, I'm not really interested in this.
Yeah.
It doesn't further what we're talking about on the show. Like,
But he did ask for it over and over again.
yeah.
I am forced to think about that. And I think the reason is because we're not the biggest show in the world, but we have
Why did we do this? Great point.
that's a great point. Yeah. we have an ability to create some virality on X. We're kind of loud. And right now, disclosure is the big hot topic. Spielberg's got his show coming up, or his movie rather, the Disclosure Day. And that's surely going to move things along. And Age of Disclosure just was released. His association, Tim's, with Elizondo is something that I think is fostered out of Tim wanting to be close to disclosure and help guide people's thoughts as we move into it. And I think the timing was such that this could be good PR. And I know that that's kind of sounds like a shitty way to characterize this, but if he could dunk on some guys who are, loud voices on Twitter, have the virality, and present as
Kinda
idiots, kind of dumb,
Yeah.
then this could be good PR for him. I cannot understand why he would ask over and over again through any other lens. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then, having him show up.
I don't understand why we agree. I guess we agreed.
I agreed out of principle.
I agreed because Matt, and this is not a joke.
No, this is
He
true.
really wanted, he was like, hey, man, we have Alberino on the hook. Can we talk to him? And I'm like, you just really want to talk to this guy,
And
don't
he's like,
you?
yeah, he does. He loves him.
He loves him.
He watched his documentaries. He showed his kids his documentaries. Like, this is kind of a bit of a hero for
And you
Matt.
should have seen this man die.
He died inside. Yeah.
Alberino comes on the show before we start, and he just goes, we go, hey, what's up, man? David plays, the Indiana Jones music, which is uncalled for. And Alberino goes, are you talking to me? Like, real nasty. And Matt's face just drops. And I was like, yeah, this is what was going to happen, Matt.
Yep. I had to tell him, like,
there was tension. Like, as soon as you guys went live, I'm like, I just felt tension. And I'm like, why? No one wants to be here. Why is Alberino doing this show? He just looks like he'd rather be, he'd rather be chewing on chainsaw,
A lot of
chewing
that
on
was kind of my
barbed wire
fault,
than
too.
being here.
Because
you were dressed like
I
him.
was dressed like him. Yeah.
That's why I
So
said, you
imagine,
don't
like,
have
showing up.
dressed like him.
Yeah, this is showing up, and I'm dressed like Indiana Jones.
But here's the thing, though. We've been doing this in the lead up to this entire time.
and he was still asking for it.
He showed up and he did not want to be there, which was perplexing because he asked.
I think he was sleepy too. Like, there's a time difference in Montana. So he's 3 hours behind. It's not early, but it's still like, it's still the morning over there in Montana when we do this. And I think even that has something to do with the idea that he couldn't collect his thoughts in a coherent fashion. I don't think he thought he had to. I think he thought these guys are retards.
Why did we do it? The question is why. I don't know why.
I know why I did it. I know why I did it. and the truth of the matter is twofold. One, you don't just ridicule a guy relentlessly, dress like him, crack a whip, yada yada, and then when he says debate me, you go, no, we kind of did, but he kept asking first. So I was like, okay. The other thing is like I said, something was strange. I at first thought we were talking about our aliens and disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Okay, we could have a conversation about that and talk about the multifaceted nature of aliens, or air quote aliens. But as I was going further into my research, things just weren't making sense to me. And it could just be because I'm a psychopath. But I do think that there was some fundamentally bizarre thing that didn't make sense. And it was that we watched The Age of Disclosure. It was propaganda. That's not up to debate for me. That was propaganda. It was giving the public their talking points. Repetition. It was almost like a form of hypnosis. Here's the experts. Trust them. Get ready for this thing that's coming. Here's all your talking points. And when I heard him say everything that happened in that documentary was great, and then echo that same dismissive sentiment of Christians are standing in the way of progress, I said, no.
And
something strange is
even
happening.
more bizarre. I'd like to ask you this, Ed.
Okay.
Why So Timothy Alberino has never followed us on any social
Oh, this was
media,
weird as shit.
but he's, I guess, known what we've been saying. Why at like the same time? I mean, within a week, I remember sending you guys a
It was
screenshot.
within like 3 days.
Yeah. I was like, oh, look, Blurry Creatures followed me on X. Like, pretty cool. Like,
Interesting,
their
yeah.
show is cool. And then a couple days later, Timothy Alberino takes the shot of retarded Nephilim podcast. And we're like, I'm stupid, so I'm like completely unrelated.
I'm like, that hurt too.
I liked it. I retweeted. I thought it was funny. And then I think we realized a little later on, like, oh no, you were talking about us. But like, why are you doing that? Why are you pointing at me? And then why are your boys following me? Like, why are you watching me?
I think
And then to the point of like where we mocked you to a point where we're like it's okay for you to go away now. Like, we gave you every out. If you the man of means that you are, say these guys were mean, they had a whip, they dressed like me, they said these things, we were making fun of everything.
unserious retards.
He's got a picture of
Isaac
Newton behind him, and we were like we're just making fun of everything.
Everything.
You could have said at some point, like, not worth my time, but you didn't every single step of the way. And I'm just like, why are you doing this?
I think I like the only, and I'm a conspiracy theorist at heart, and my 2 cents is virtually meaningless. But I the lens that I look at this through that makes sense is like, oh, you selected us for some PR, baby, and it went awry. That's my only. So yeah, but you're absolutely right, Ed. Everybody was miserable. I had a good time, but everybody was miserable.
I went to the bathroom twice.
Yeah,
during that episode.
If I don't
I just
smile,
walked out.
if I don't smile while I'm wearing an Indiana Jones outfit, I am an asshole of magnificent proportions. You cannot frown while you're dressed like Harrison Ford in one of his greatest films ever.
When I clicked on the link, because Top sent me the link to the YouTube channel. The first thing I did was laugh out loud because I saw how you were dressed. Then the second thing I did was like, whoa, Alberino looks freaking miserable. It looks like he's doing like community service.
Yeah, he was doing community service. This was court appointed. But yeah,
so I have another question. Seriously, a different topic, because again, the whole alien thing is not purely my lane. I have interest in it, but you disclosure. You keep talking about disclosure, and from someone on the outside of this looking in, who's just only peripherally, casually thinking about the alien thing, I've been hearing about so-called disclosure for freaking my whole life.
Oh yeah, me too.
20, 30 years. Why is now different? Because now when I hear people say, we're finally going to have disclosure, I'm like, whatever. It's like when they say, I'm going to release the JFK files. No, you're never going to tell us what really happened.
Same thing with the Epstein files now.
So my question is, you seem to think that, and maybe I'm wrong, that something is actually going to happen soon. And why is now different than all the other 3 million times they said they're going to tell us the truth?
I would say the only reason they're not going to tell us the truth, that's for sure. But the only reason that it's a little bit different than other times is because of the production value behind the push for it right now, right? You have Elizondo and all of these high-ranking naval, Air Force, you name it, all these officials on this documentary. It broke download records on Amazon. 20 million people saw it in its debut week. That certainly does not mean that this is going to be it. And I think that that's a great question, and it's a fair thing to say that, because
we've been talking about it for a while, right? And I'm sure as when you were younger, you heard a lot about this as well, but people have been going on the Joe Rogan show. They've been showing, what's the guy's name? Bob Lazar. He's showing how these things work. They're showing craft. They're telling you this is on mainstream news. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect, these are not going to be in like ascending order at all, because I haven't thought about it, but silver, gold, that kind of monetary increase, that signifies a disruption.
I wish I'd bought more.
Me too.
In comparison with McCaw over in London coming out, this was in the London Times, saying that the banks need to prepare for financial collapse because disclosure will cause financial collapse. And it's just, this article just dropped the other day.
Whenever we're on the cusp of something strange happening, silver and gold spike and money crashes, and Bitcoin is crashing now. The dollar is in its state. That's the way it is. So you have those things. And there's one more point that I think what really sets my alarms off about disclosure this time, there's 2 more things actually. Number one, the ease at which our government right now is telling us about the technologies that they have, like what they just used in Venezuela.
Oh yeah.
These are things we've been speculating on. This frequency technology is like, we used it, like we can do way more, is what they're saying now.
You want a little brain bleed?
I mean, listen, today actually they just revealed direct energy weapons on Twitter.
Those
This
are
is
Jewish space lasers.
this is how they're telling us now too. Very disrespectful.
Strange.
The Department of Homeland Defense or something like that. They're like, yeah, DEWs, and they're showing like cool little, corporate graphics about how they use this.
Forgive
as,
my
like,
co-host anti-Semitic remarks.
Well-
Scrub those from the record.
scrub those from the record, please. So that is all there as well. Man,
I think Spielberg coming out with the disclosure day after
Yeah.
somebody that was
media.
like his understudy.
Oh, but here's the biggest
Go
one.
ahead.
The biggest one for me is the geopolitical ramifications along with these like religious ties that we're seeing, like about the end of times stuff that's continually being flirted with us, especially with the actions of Israel and what they're about to do. They're about to like pretty much take that whole land. So I'm like, all of those things, and I know that these happen all the time, but all these things on the world stage, and then plus a government documentary where they're telling you this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, oh,
And then you
I
got
don't
some other
feel
stuff
good
like
about this.
Blavatsky, that old bitch, and
timing- yeah, the
Alice
timing is
Bailey,
right.
they look to 25, 26 as being when aliens were going to be revealed. Even Baba Vanga, the old blind mystic woman, also said that aliens were going to arrive in the, I think, 2026. But to your point, Ed, you know what it's almost like? You know how they have an antichrist in position for every season and they never know when the time is going to come?
Yeah.
You look to like a Stephen Greer or a David Wilcox or like any of these guys who have been propped up to be like, for a moment in time, serious intellects that are going to lead the charge when it comes to preparing the public for this sort of thing. But then it doesn't happen.
Right.
Because the time's not right. And then those dudes go crazy. David Wilcox loses his mind. Stephen Greer loses his mind. Elizondo is the guy right now. If it doesn't happen within enough time, Elizondo is going to lose his mind.
Yeah.
And they'll just prepare another guy. So
I think
it could
what's
well not
happening
be
though,
right
like,
now.
to be honest, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think astrologically, and I mean, how else would I explain?
Can we stop saying astrologically and say Maserothically?
Maserothically, something is going on in this realm right now where all signs are pointing to the old gods revealing themselves very soon. Like these people are talking about disclosure. We're going to do disclosure. You're not doing disclosure. You're getting ahead of this because when they come, they're going to come. And I just feel like there are signs that let them know that like the time is not, maybe it's not now, but like the time is primed for now. They could come now.
Yeah.
And they are doing a lot of stuff, like just rolling the carpet out as if the time is now. So I'm like, that's why we're watching it in that way. And I feel like that's why people are moving in this way as well.
I don't think they have as much control. That's always the thing, is like, the nefarious satanic elites controlling everything. They're not as powerful as people give them credit for, but I think they are opportunistic as shit. And they're constantly waiting for the correct alignment of world events and this and that. And they'll do it. And after 2020, we've been introduced to a worldwide calamity. So that helped to prepare us an additional layer. But to your point, Ed, this might not be it. And if I was a betting man, I would say it's not.
I would say so too.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's my thought about it. They've been preparing for this forever, just like the Antichrist. They've always had someone on deck, but they're not in control. God is going to decide when this age ends. And I think they're guessing that they're using their best guess. And maybe they think, okay, everything's in alignment, but God could like, nope, another 5, 10, 20 years. And if it, just like we talked about 3i Atlas, I think like last summer we were talking about it. And I think what I said was, it was all around the whole rapture happening in September. I said, if the rapture happens in September, 3i Atlas is going to be the alien disclosure. If it doesn't, then 3i Atlas ain't going to be because it's going to be nothing. Well, it didn't happen. 3i Atlas meant nothing. I think they were ready to say, okay, if this happens, if this cataclysmic event happens and Christians, transform or disappear or whatever, well, here's how we're going to usher it in. Well, it didn't happen. Okay, well, what's the next thing? Yep. So maybe it will. Maybe they're right this time, but they're I
think it's ultimately the goal. And I think it is probably the biggest deception. And I actually agree with Alberino in that it's likely the Antichrist will emerge from this, because I see people stripping away the biblical description of Jesus, and instead, they're worshiping a Pleiadian Jesus who wears like a blue suit with silver boots kind of a deal, or New Age Jesus or what have you. So I can see that being set up over there too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Antichrist does emerge from something like that. Let's say there is Pleiadians, tall Nords, the tall whites, and something happens and all of a sudden it is revealed that Jesus was a Pleiadian sent from their star system to this. I can see that happening. It's not out of the realm of possibility to me, because I understand that alien abductee victims will come back with that narrative. So it is evident to me that some entity seeks to plant that narrative into the minds of these victims. And I don't think that that's purposeless.
As an aside, one of my proofs when I talk to someone who's not a Christian, doesn't believe in Jesus, I'm like, hey, here's one of my proof points. Everyone wants to appropriate Jesus. Every other religion. Here's who Jesus really is. He's a Pleiadian. He's an ascended master. He's a Buddhist. He's
a
whatever.
prophet.
He's a prophet. He's Isa. No one does that with Muhammad. Nobody ever says, "Oh yeah, Muhammad."
Nobody wants to claim Muhammad.
Nobody wants to claim, Buddha or Krishna or whoever. It's always everyone appropriates Jesus.
Yeah.
So there must be something to it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where that was absent from the narrative, and then all of a sudden they started, it was like I was saying that earlier, the alien abductee victims, they will always come back warning about some sort of coming calamity, whether it's a polar shift or just this worldwide destruction, and that the nature of it always changes throughout time, and the prophecy that they're given never comes to pass. But also there was a time when like Jesus was just absent from it, and they were told that this is wrong. And I think the evidence for Christ became so overwhelming that now alien abductee victims will get Jesus, but he's a Pleiadian, silver boot wearing, ascended master.
So, and last thing is, I'm actually probably have to wrap this up pretty soon. Was that because you guys talked a little bit about out of body experiences, and I'm not here to tell anyone what they have or haven't seen. I mean, I don't know, but when I have encountered people who've had an out of body experience and they say they see Jesus, I always ask them, what did he look like?
That's interesting. Yeah.
And if they say something like, oh, wow, he was just light, I couldn't really see. Okay, I can deal with that. But when because Alberino mentioned that there was a Catholic person who said they saw Jesus, and what did he look like? Cesare Borgia. He looked like, they had the goatee and the long hair, and he was Caucasian. Like, I find it very difficult to believe that Jesus would present himself as a murdering, rapist, incest committer, who's Cesare Borgia. So
I was listening to one recently where somebody said his skin was like bronze. Like they were like, it was like hot golden metal or something like that. I was like, that's interesting.
I could buy into that.
Yeah.
But I want to wrap. I just want to give another quick commercial before we wrap it up about the spiritual warfare course.
Yeah. Now that we've established that the spiritual realm is real,
yes,
maybe now it's time to consider how to defend yourself in it.
Right. Yeah. And so we've talked a lot about it already. I think if you're watching, I think you have a pretty good idea of how I feel about the spiritual realm, and that there are these dark forces there, and that they will attack you. And one of the things that I hear from Christians all the time is like, why am I being attacked? Like, because you're in a war.
Yeah.
If you're in a war, that's like being dropped on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day and saying, why are people shooting at me?
Yeah.
Because you're in a war. But the good news is, you already have the victory. You are more powerful than the entities that are attacking you. You just have to know how to, first of all, defend yourself, how to go on the offensive for yourself and for your loved ones. So that's my main message to anyone who is struggling spiritually. You have the authority. You have the victory. You just need to learn to walk in it. And our churches, unfortunately, have done a very poor job of equipping Christians for the warfare. First of all, telling them that they're in a war. They say, hey, come to Jesus, believe that he died for your sins. Yeah, they didn't, but they don't tell you that, oh, by the way, you've just chosen a side in a war. So prepare to be attacked. So you will be, but you have the victory. And this course teaches you how to walk in that victory. As I said earlier, you're going to learn defense. You're going to learn about yourself, your unique strongholds that the enemy uses against you and how to shore those up. You're going to learn offense. You're going to learn the laws that these entities have to obey and that you use them to your advantage. You're going to learn the special situations like we were talking about before, where this kind only comes out through prayer and fasting. What does that mean? That means that you can't just say Jesus and they disappear. Some of them are stronger than others. There are different classifications. Some of them are weaker, some of them are stronger. And for the stronger ones, you're going to have to do different things. If you recall, when Jesus encountered the demoniac in Caesarea Philippi, Jesus said, come out of him. Nothing happened. Then Jesus said, what is your name? He says, my name is Legion, for we are many. Then Jesus could cast him out. So even Jesus had to do some special tactics in order to get this guy who's possessed by thousands of demons out. So the point is, we're going to talk about special situations like that, generational curses, which are real, and there's a way out of it, but they're legal. These generational curses are these entities having a legal claim on your family that passes down to you. And it seems unfair, but it's actually not if you understand how blessings and curses work. But you have the authority to get out of them permanently. You have the authority to go before the court of God and plead your case and break those covenants. And we're going to show you how to do that. So those are the special situations. And then lastly, we want you to be generative, to duplicate this, to teach others what you've learned, so that, you start, just like in any army, you start to take back ground. So that's what it's all about. You can sign up to start getting the preparatory emails, which are starting to go out already. And if it's something you're interested in, please join us in April. Myself and John, you're going to have a ton of amazing, not just our teaching and the coursework and quizzes and all that kind of stuff. We want to make sure you're grasping it. You're also going to leave with a lot of material. They're going to be, a lot of books and handouts and charts and things like that you will take with you permanently, so that you always have that on your side for the future and help others.
Quick question about it, because I was just thinking, at any point during this, will the person that is dealing in the warfare, it seems like you're going to have to talk with these entities. Like, if you have to ask, if there's one that I got to know your name to get you out, then I got to talk to you, and this thing will respond. Like, I assume you're going to go through how we should be talking to these things, because I'm not.
Yes.
I don't want to do that.
Yes. Yeah, and you will. Yes, we will talk about how to talk to them. There is a very specific way to talk to them, and this isn't like some arcane secret that we can't. No, Jesus already told us how. We just need to learn, because sometimes we read the narratives in the gospel, and they're great stories, but we don't really break down how. Here's a tactic that Jesus used. Jesus talked to these entities in a certain way. He did not talk to, say, the other earthly enemies like the Pharisees. He didn't talk to the Pharisees the same way he talked to demons. And I'll give you a hint for free. You do not get into conversations with them. That's a mistake.
Which, by the way, Ed, is pretty much what everybody's doing. It's like, let me get a Ouija board. Let me make an AI friend. Let me talk to these things.
So like the conversation's limited, business only.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Look when Jesus was dealing with Satan, when Satan was tempting him, Jesus didn't get into a conversation with him. If you want to know get a hint on how to do that functionally, look at how Jesus talked to Satan. Yeah. But again, we're going to get into the step by step, so it's not, you won't have to guess, and we're going to tell you exactly how to speak to them, because yes, spiritual warfare is done through words.
It's like when the homeless guy in the city says, I can tell you where you got those shoes.
Yeah, and
you just keep walking. You say, nope, no, thank
don't do
you.
it.
No, thank
don't
you.
open that door.
Yep,
exactly.
I get it.
Man, and thank you again for coming on. Another great episode. I'll put up Faith by Reason on the screen again. People should be going here, checking this out. And you should also be going to his Patreon and subscribing there. I'm hoping that you've gotten more subscribers since your appearance on Merkel's show.
After this episode, go check that out, and then go subscribe to Ed's platform. I
got a lot of subscribers, and I got a ton of people signing up for their spiritual warfare pre-registration.
That's awesome.
So, but what I do want to say is that there are limitations on how many we're going to take initially, because we're going to be live once a month, and after a while, it's not going to be in your best interest. If you come in 5 months in, you won't be ready for what we're talking about at that point. So you're not going to get the full value. So we're going to cut it off, because we're not trying to just take your money. We want to make sure you're getting the most out of this. So if you come in month 5, you're just new, and we're talking about stuff that's advanced, it's not going to do you any good. So we rather say, just come back. We'll do it again next year. Come back then, so you get the full experience. So that said, sign up as soon as you can. Because there will be a time where we'll say, okay, we've gone too far, and we can't take any more new people, not because of us, because we don't think it'll be beneficial to you at this point.
Yeah, you don't want to join a class in the middle of the semester.
Also, I mean, even something you guys will have probably considered is like scale. Like the problem of the modern day church is you got a preacher passing a preacher speaking to 300 people, and Jesus had 12 disciples. Jesus had 12 of them. It's like, got to consider that how much effect these people will have. And then that comes with the price barrier, because now you need to filter out the people who actually mean it. This is just pure economics.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
It's time too. I mean, it's a lot of time. Yeah. It's a course. You said 12 months.
It's a ton of time. And and we'll know you're serious, because again, like I said, there is, it's not free. It's And if you want it, great. If you don't, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
You can still go to my Patreon. You can still ask me questions there if you're a Patreon, which is, inexpensive. And I'll be happy to help to the degree I can. But again, this course is something completely different. And by the way, as part of the course, you will automatically be at a top tier Patreon because,
very cool.
That'll be part of it because you'll get, there's a lot of benefits. You will get your money's worth.
Or just live with the demons.
Or just live
Or
with the
you keep getting oppressed. You can keep having your Satan use your wife against you. Or your husband.
That's funny.
Hey, thank you for coming on, man. Guys, it's been
Thanks,
another
guys.
great episode. And enjoy your weekend. Until next time, don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. We'll see you later.